For the longest time, I used to just read the information, make notes, and then keep rereading it, magically hoping that somehow it would stick in my head. And then when I couldn't remember it later, I'd get annoyed at myself for not studying hard enough, for not repeating the topics enough, or maybe I was just dumb. But the problem wasn't that I wasn't studying hard enough. It was simply because I was not processing what I was reading in a smart way. And that is what I'm going to show you how to do in this video, because I know that you're stuck there too. After analyzing the way I studied for the last 6+ years of education, these are the 3 exact steps that include every action I take and every thought that I have while I read, from the second I lay my eyes on the page all the way to getting the information imprinted in my brain. And by the way, if you want to improve this skill of studying smart, I've made an absolutely free email newsletter called Study Scoop. It is free. Just enter your email address below and I will regularly send out actionable study tips that you can incorporate into your learning process from today. I'll also be sending out full PDF guides and templates and resources that I'm using in my daily life. Like my full mind map PDF guide that I'm making right now that will be emailed out to all of you for free next week. I'll include the detailed method, annotated images to my mind maps, and answers to everyone's questions about making and using them as well. So again, linked in the video description, totally free emails and resources coming out soon. Sign up to Study Scoop. And by the way, one of the highest yield study skills that I mentioned in there is exactly this topic: learning how to read and encode information effectively so that you remember it forever, or at least for a long time. Number 1, identify the meaning of what you're reading. Let me read a bit from my online textbook and you can see. Rheumatoid arthritis is a chronic systemic autoimmune disorder characterized by symmetrical inflammation of the synovial joints leading to progressive joint structure disability and extra-articular manifestations. Now that's a lot of big words. Will most of you be able to understand this on your first read? Probably not. So when there's a lot to read, there's a lot to go through, what is the best way to do this? I say it in almost every video and I will say it again and again until it's stuck in everyone's heads. Our brains learn in layers. That is how we understand information and there is no other way. So if I don't know what those words mean, if I don't have a base for any of this stuff, then I will not be able to remember it, learn nothing. And what this means is that we need to know what the basics are first. We can't just be focusing on this sentence by sentence. We need to skim through this entire chapter right at the start. And then while you're skimming, if you don't know the meanings of the headings or the keywords, look them up. Because the goal of skimming is just to figure out what the words mean and how this entire chapter is laid out. How is it divided? What are its sections? What do each of the sections include? You don't need to read everything or understand it perfectly or dive into the details, just the basics. And then after the skimming, you can go back to these sections and start reading again and see what happens. See, I'm gonna read the rheumatoid arthritis sentence again. Actually, this first sentence is useless. Now that I've skimmed it, I know how everything is laid out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and start reading about what my mind is naturally curious with, which also keeps me interested if the disease is boring. All right, I'm going to go to the diagnosis section because I'm curious about that in rheumatoid arthritis. How do you actually figure it out if you have it? Look at the rheumatoid factor and okay, let's look at this antibody. An anti-CCP antibody is one of the tests you do to check if you have rheumatoid arthritis, RA. It's more specific for RA than rheumatoid factor is, even though it's legit called rheumatoid factor. You see, I didn't even have to read that fully. We are now not clueless. We've understood the basics of it. In this moment, I've read this. I'm not looking at any of the complex words. I don't know what anti-TNF therapy is, whatever. I'm just looking at what I specifically need to know at this point, which is what this test is and why I need to know it. But as you can see, that's not enough. Only knowing this fact is not enough. You only know it in isolation. What people naturally do at this point is that they just try and repeat and memorize this fact, force it in. Okay, anti-CCP antibody, 95% specific for rheumatoid arthritis, better than rheumatoid factor, blah, blah, blah. And that's never how it's gonna actually stick in. So next, step 2, what I very naturally do at this point is categorize the information that I'm looking at to see where the specific bit about the anti-CCP antibody goes in my head. How is it specifically relevant to this disease? As you identify the meaning of the specific words in this sentence, your second thought should be very quickly, very naturally, it should be, how does this fit into my mental model of the topic? Because only once you tell your brain, this is relevant, you need to remember this, will it actually remember it. And categorizing it in the topic is the easiest way that I found to do that. So if this topic was a tree, which branch would it be coming off of? For rheumatoid arthritis, this obviously would hang off the investigations branch. Is the second test you do is 90 to 95% specific for RA. A couple more related facts come along, those are the leaves of the branches. Nice. Just keep in mind, very basic. You don't think about it too deeply about exactly where it's fitting in the topic. You just need a basic idea of where to put it in the topic so that it makes the next step easier. Now for the final step where we solidify it in our head in the best way possible. But before we get into that final step where everything we're reading clicks into place, a tool that makes information processing even faster for me is Crammify, the kind sponsor of today's video. I know that the coursework for this semester is next level, tons of lectures, tons of notes, and best of all, your teacher sucks as well. Yay. But imagine you have a personalized tutor at your fingertips who's not only able to understand things like an expert, but is able to summarize huge amounts of material and notes, and then create personally tailored high-yield study guides and practice questions from them with a click of 2 buttons. Well, if that's the case, your dream has come true because Crammify does exactly that. All you have to do is upload your chapters, your lectures, and poof, job done. Number 1, study guides outlining everything that's important. Number 2, takeaways, summaries, and number 3, for all of you who are complaining about not having past papers, it generates full mock exams for you as well. A cool feature that's super helpful, especially for you maths, chemistry, physics lot, is that it comes up with similar question types related to what you've already done. Literally like a personal tutor telling you, yeah, you did okay, but here's some questions with different types of questions that you can now attempt. Different numbers, different equations. Which, by the way, is what I'm always talking about, assessing yourself with different types of problems rather than repeating the same ones. So honestly, I'd really recommend that you take advantage of this very useful tool. Go make an account on Crammify. It is very easy. Just use the link in my description. Again, link in my description. Use it, take advantage, and let's get back to the final part of this method. Step 3, relating the information. How can we relate the information that we briefly understood into our brain? Well, there's pretty much 2 ways that I've been linking the information in my head for years now, but the second way is more recent and it's what I've been doing 99% of the time, and it's worked wonders, especially for this stage of your reading when you're just at the start. The first thing that you could do is think of the importance of what you're reading. What does this antibody actually do in the body? Why is it specific for RA? And then you visualize how it actually works and why it's increasing with this disease. This is very helpful, but at this stage of reading the topic, it is so slow, and my goal isn't to perfectly understand every aspect of how this antibody is working right now. It's to get the big picture, the general concepts. For me right now, as a student clinician, I need to understand how the patient's journey is working as they're going through this disease. I don't want to be diving into the details, wasting time and putting my brain power into understanding how anti-CCP antibodies work. It's not something that's super relevant to creating that big picture, and also it's never going to be tested. So what if I told you could have a base that you could link this information to very quickly without having to fully understand, without having to fully create this visual story in your head about the antibody? What if you'd already created a mind map with all the basic information of not just rheumatoid arthritis, but septic, reactive, and osteoarthritis? Now think about how easily this information might stick in your head. Because I made this mind map a few days ago and you can clearly see how the patient pathway is drawn out. Anti-CCP is the second step when it comes to testing for rheumatoid arthritis. Oh nice, in comparison, I don't think osteoarthritis has these antibody tests. You can diagnose it clinically, but in comparison, I remember on my mind map, septic arthritis does have these antibody tests, RF and ANA that are tested. And it makes sense that none of the others use this specific antibody testing because, again, remember it was 90 to 95 specific for rheumatoid arthritis. Did you see what I just did there? Obviously saying it out loud took a lot longer, but in seconds, I've linked everything in my head. I've linked this specific piece of knowledge to a mind map of the basics that I built like 5 days ago. I related this specific fact, this new thing that I've just read, to other topics, to other diagnosis tests of other related diseases. And the way that will stick in my head in this stage, nothing compares to that. Nothing compares considering how easy that was. Now imagine you were linking all of the topics, processes, details, etc. as you were reading through them to this initial mind map. Imagine how easy it would be not just to remember the specific fact, but relating it to the everything else reinforces all the other knowledge on the mind map as well. And all it takes are seconds of me just thinking about, okay, where would this go on my initial mind map? Okay, oh, this is different or this is similar from the other things on there. How can I relate it a bit more? It's so quick. Out of all the topics that I learned in my 3rd year of medicine, the ones that I remember the best were the ones that I made mind maps for and the ones that I continuously refer to those mind maps back to in my head. So let's say you're convinced that making mind maps is the way forward. Now, when do you create these mind maps in the first place? Ideally, you do it after you've skimmed and primed yourself for the topic for the very first time. While you're skimming 3 or so related diseases, reading more about it, think about how they're all related together. How can you work to visually relate them on your mind map in a simple way? What is that one central idea, that one central image that could be in that center of the mind map, how can we connect things off of it, and how can we connect those things as well? For the diseases that I was talking about, I realized that they all affect our joint in some way or the other. So what I did was I made a drawing of the joint in the middle of the mind map, like half of it having like no cartilage, half it having filled with like fluid and the macrophages, etc., fully inflamed. Again, it sounds simple when I say it now, oh, all of the arthritis diseases are related to the joint. Obviously put the joint in the middle of the page. But it actually required me to think about it, the basics and how the diseases worked for several minutes. To skim through the topics, 15 minutes each of them, and then to put a lot of thought into how this mind map would be structured. And the thing is, this is the part that people get stuck on. It's hard to relate the topics together right at the start when you have basically no knowledge about them. But this is the best way to learn while you read, in the fastest way as well, so that you don't have to keep rereading the stuff or get stuck or not remember anything. The overall idea that I want you to take away from this video is that you need a basic model of the topic or all of the related topics together to then link the new information that you're reading to. If there was a study hack that I could sell, that is what it would be. To actually get good at creating mind maps, because I know this might just be your introduction to it, you might not have done it much in the past, I'm giving you full steps in this video with a live version of me actually making the mind map from the information, never having looked at it before, skimming in front of you, writing the keywords down, thinking of how I'm going to structure everything in this full video. And I go through 3 topics, by the way, in less than 30 minutes. Anyways, I really hope that this video helps shed some light on how to actually read and learn while you're reading, because I was getting quite a few comments about it in the last few weeks. Hopefully the idea of encoding, I've simplified it down to 3 steps: identifying the meaning of it, categorizing it, and then relating it. I hope that idea is simplified in your head and now you can consciously think about it while you're reading. Subscribe, spam the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one.